Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. Hello and happy 100th episode of the Breakthrough Brand podcast. I would say that I can't believe I've recorded this many episodes, but I absolutely can believe it because I love this podcast so much. I love you guys so much. And this whole journey has been an absolute blast for me. My podcast is seriously one of my favorite things I get to do in my business. I say that all the time and I mean it. So cheers to 100 episodes. And for this special episode, I wanted to do something different, and I thought a really long time about what to do for the 100th episode. I had all these different ideas. I actually ended up asking you guys on Instagram for ideas, and quite a few of you suggested having someone else interview me, and I absolutely love that idea. So I asked my friend Jena Viviano to interview me, and she asked some really awesome questions. It's a fun conversation. You'll hear me say this in the intro once we're talking, but she's seriously one of my dearest friends and knows me super well. So it was fun getting to have her interview me and talk about some stuff that we've already talked about, just the two of us, but now for you guys to hear. But some questions she asked, we talk about what I was like in high school, what I think the hardest things about running a business is. That's pretty interesting. My favorite and least favorite parts of my business, what I see the next 5 years looking like, both professionally and in my personal life. We talk about how I incorporate faith into my business in practical ways and so many other things. It's a jam-packed episode, and I think you guys are going to love it. So I hope you enjoy this flipping of the mic and getting an insider peek into my life and my business. And I also just want to say real quick, thank you for being here. Whether this is your first episode or if you've listened to all 100, like if this is literally like I've heard all 99 before this and now I'm continuing that streak, which it's so funny because I get messages from you guys all the time that so many of you have truly listened to every single episode, like not missed one. A lot of you have binged it all of like, I'm just going to keep listening to this, which I think is so fun. So I love hearing from you guys when that's the case. If you've listened to all 100 episodes, definitely DM me on Instagram and let me know. I'd love to thank you for that. So again, whether this is your first or 100th, I hope you enjoy this and cheers to 100 more episodes to come. Thank you guys again for listening. I'm going to play this episode with Jena now. All right, guys, so I'm sitting virtually, actually, with my dear friend, Jena Viviano, and it's funny because I asked on Instagram for ideas for this 100th episode of like, what could I do that's going to be different and fun, and a lot of you guys said have someone else interview you, and Jena, I thought of you immediately for this. I was like, she would be the perfect person because you know me both like really well as like a friend and in business. Like we both know each other personally and professionally, and like if you put us in a room, we can talk about business for like 1,000 years. And we can talk about faith, about our personal lives. Like, you know so much about me. And you were literally the first guest on this podcast on...
Oh, was I really?
Yeah, besides Adam. Because he was technically the first guest. But yeah, you were the first person. Yeah, you were the first person where I'm like, business owner to business owner, I'm going to interview you. And I designed your website years ago, and you've used 3 templates. So it's like... Yeah. There's just a lot of like great connections. And again, you're someone who knows me so well and such a wise, dear friend. So Jena came up with a bunch of questions that you sent me over yesterday that are super fun, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy them. So I'm just going to like hand it over to you to like host now.
Does this feel weird? Does this feel weird for you to hand over the mic? We're going to have fun. We're not going to make it high stress, but I just want to congratulate you. 100 episodes is no small thing. And actually, you forgot to mention that I was there in the beginning parts of this podcast. We took a business weekend. It was 2 years ago. And we took a business weekend and you were working on it. And I just turned to you and I said, just launch the thing already.
Well, and I think I recorded the 3rd episode on that trip. And did you record an episode too while we were there, or was it only me?
I don't know.
Yeah, I remember I sat in that little guest room though and was like, recording. That's so fun. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's fun to see you now at the 100th episode. You launched and you moved forward. And Elizabeth is one of the most organized people that I know. She is, when she sets her mind to something, she puts a lot of action behind it. So this is going to be really fun today. We're going to talk about some personal things. We're going to ask some really tough business questions. We want to know all the nitty gritty. So let's just start at the very beginning. Okay. What did you want to be when you grew up? When you were a little girl, like what did you dream of being when you were an adult?
Okay. I love that. Okay. So like most kids, that changed a lot. But like when I was really little, I wanted to be an actress, and
love it.
I actually took acting classes a lot growing up and like did all the plays and things like that. So that was the big one, is like, I want to be an actress. And then pretty quickly I decided I wanted to be a fashion designer, because my grandmother who lived with us growing up was really into sewing. And so I would sew with her and sew clothes for my dolls and was really into that.
Oh my gosh, that's so impressive.
It was not very great clothes, but it was really fun. And both my grandmothers, that one who's now passed away and the one who my dad's mom who's still living, both were like very into sewing and weaving and things. But then by middle school, I know you know this, Jena, but I was like deep into the MySpace world and making MySpace themes, I think is literally what they were called.
R.I.P. MySpace.
Yes. But I was so in love with doing MySpace designing, and like we had all kinds of, my sister and I, different MySpace pages. And you would think that at that point I would have been like, I want to be a designer, but I didn't know that design was even really a career.
There were a lot of things that when we were younger, we didn't know were career possibilities. Because I feel like a lot of things didn't exist. Like I always tell people, like 10 years ago, Facebook, wasn't what Facebook is today. So like a whole industry birthed out of that. So we'll give your younger self some grace.
Yeah. But MySpace should have known then. And then, I actually went to college with being a nursing major. So, and pretty quickly changed. So never took any classes, but at that point was when I ended up discovering what to do. So
I love it. So before you got into college though, I need to know this because I love asking people this question. What were you involved with in high school? Because I think it tells a lot about a person, with their high school self at least. And did you get any superlatives in high school?
Yes. Okay. So, I'll say what I was involved in. I was a cheerleader 6th through 12th. So basically all of middle school and all of high school. And I got to be cheer captain twice. So in 8th grade, middle schooler. And then
I was a cheerleader in middle school. I'm
kind
of embarrassed by that. But yeah.
Don't be embarrassed. I love cheerleading. And our team was not like, what is that show that came out this year about cheerleading?
Texas.
It was so good. Yeah. I loved that show. But we were nothing like that. I think it might literally it's called Cheer. I think that's right.
I don't know.
But yeah, it was so good, but we were not that good. We did a lot of dancing and stuff, but cheerleading was it. I ran track for like a second and quit later in high school. So really cheerleading was it. And then with superlatives, I got most school spirited my senior year, which is so funny because I was not the most school spirited. They just voted me that because I was the person who cheered forever. And so it was like associated. But then the guy who got most school spirited literally ran the student section at like the sports game. So he actually was school spirited. But I just cheered a lot.
You were just default.
Yes. So that was the superlative.
I love that. I always joke with my husband where I'm like, we would have never been friends in high school. Like knowing your persona in high school, we probably never would have been friends. And I would have like been interested in you because you were a bad boy, but like would have never probably hung out with you. So I love asking people questions about high school. So you went to college, went to nursing, and then talk to us a little bit about becoming an entrepreneur. Like you became an entrepreneur. What's been the hardest thing about that? I know everyone can see like the very successful version, but what's been the hardest part about becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Okay. So people who've listened to this podcast since the beginning would have heard the like story of starting my business, but really like thinking about that transition. Like I literally went to our school's career coaching. So like literally thinking about like what you do, Jena, and met with them being like, what should I major in? And they had me do these different tests and talk to them. And that's how I ended up in digital media studies, which was computer science and design and marketing. And it was like, I found my spot, like this is amazing. And I did a lot of freelance work in college, but literally had no desire to start a business at that point. But I always thought I'd be an entrepreneur at some point. My dad owned his own business and was always like, which literally from the time I was a little girl was like, Elizabeth, you're going to own a business someday. And like, he would be like, you're going to be a millionaire. He was very encouraging. And a lot of people,
a lot of truth over you. A lot of forward thinking things. I think there's power in that. I
do too. And like, I know Adam, even when we first started dating and he knew my dad would say stuff like that, he was like, does that not feel like a lot of pressure? And I'm like, it actually didn't, because it never felt like he was saying, you have to go do this for me, or like, I'm going to be disappointed. Sure. It was more of just like, I see this in you. So I had that in the back of my mind always of like, I'll do that at some point. But I like did not think that you could start a business when you're like in your 20s. I don't know. I just was like, I didn't know that's like a thing. So, you know, I went to corporate America job in Nashville. Adam and I moved to Nashville and we got married. And long story short, I really didn't like the job. I know a lot of people, like you had a great experience really overall in like corporate America. And and that's not true of everyone. It wasn't true of me, but I really, when I quit that job, was still not planning to start a business, but I applied for jobs, didn't hear back from anyone. And so the business kind of like started itself with me freelancing a lot. So that's kind of how it like came about in a nutshell. But like, thinking about the hardest part, I always know that like I don't have a ton of comparison to not owning a business, because I literally worked at that job for like 4 months before quitting. And then, you know, before then I worked plenty in high school and college, but it's like, that's not the same as like working a real life job. So I don't have a ton of comparison, but I would say with a business, it's like you can't ever quit. It's like it's always in the background. Like there's no turning it off. Yes. And so it's like, you know, there's tons of jobs. I know not all of them are this way, but where you really can at 5 o'clock when you leave the office, you don't have to think about the job anymore. And it's hard to turn off your mind with your business. You have to be like so intentional about it. And I actually just, the past 2 weeks for like, we're recording this in the very beginning of the year. So we're actually recording this right before you guys are going to hear it. But in that little time between like right before Christmas and then the new year, I took off like completely. And it was so intentional of like, how do I really like just not think about business, which means not listening to a ton of podcasts about business, not reading business books, not really being in my inbox. And it just takes a lot more work to like turn it off. But I still love it. So it's like, do you want to turn it off? Sometimes you don't.
It's like a passion. It's a very tough line, very gray area. And I totally relate to everything that you're talking about. I think a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this are thinking, yes, that's the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur is keeping that separation, especially when you like what you do. So it kind of becomes like, well, I should just go on and keep doing it. But then that's a very quick way to get to burnout. So I totally get what you're talking about. Let's talk about some of your big goals that you have for 2021. As you mentioned, we're in the beginning parts of January. What are those like big audacious goals that you have either for this year or just for your business in general? I love hearing people's big goals. I know. And you're so good with goal setting stuff too. I feel like I'm not, but I appreciate that.
I think you are. I love talking about goals with you. Okay. So like one, I don't know that I've told you this one, but I would say, and it feels like a lot to even share this on the podcast, but the big, like, it's not even long-term actually. So, okay, I'll just say what it is to have do $1 million in revenue before I'm 30.
I love that.
And so I'm 28. Yes. So it's like more of like, I guess like I'll turn, am I 20? Yeah, I'm 28. So I'll turn 29.
I don't know. You should know.
I know. I always forget how old I am. So I'll turn 29 in October. So really like that could be a this year goal. I think that's stretching it for this year though. Honestly, so that'd be like more of a stretch goal. But then I think next year, like by the end of the year, that would be a goal for me.
That's
and
amazing.
It does feel scary. And that's so much money mindset work too of like, because that does feel like, whoa, like it's weird for that to be like realistic in a sense. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's a lot. But so I'm still kind of
How do you work through that? How do you work through those money mindset issues? I'd love to. I don't think I even know the answer to this. Like, how do you work through those?
Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravey.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. I think for me, actually, like not just like thinking it and like letting it go, but really like hearing yourself think those thoughts subconsciously a lot of the time, like, am I worthy of making that much? My parents never made that much. That's a huge one that comes up for me because we grew up with not much money, and I quickly was making more than my parents did. Like in this, except for my dad because he was also a business owner, but like that felt weird. So like really instead of just being like, oh, okay, but I'm just going to ignore that and keep doing what I'm doing, like actually paying attention to it and kind of working through that of like, what does that actually mean? I love life coaching, so I'm all about doing like the thought model on it of like thinking like, okay, what is the thought, feeling, action, and result with that? And then praying about it too is really big for me.
Yeah. So let's talk about faith. Like how, we're both people of faith. We are not shy about that. How do you actually, the episode where I was apparently the first guest, we talked about faith and like incorporating it into your work. So how does faith play out in your business?
Yes. Okay. I love that question. And I want to say too, for everyone who wants to hear that episode, it's episode 42. I literally put it on my like note right here so I can remember to say that because that's seriously, and that's why I get so many comments on still of like people just like, you were just seriously preaching that episode. And I got so much from what you shared.
I think I need to re-listen to it for myself.
It was really good. So okay. With faith in business. So I'm saying that episode will give people a good idea who are believers and who are like, how do I make that work into a business that isn't a ministry? For me, I do consider my business like a personal brand business, and faith is literally a part of who I am. So when it makes sense, I'm going to talk about it, right. Even though I'm not a ministry. So it's like, yes, I'm literally selling website templates. I'm about to be selling courses and things as well. And so it's like, it's all business focused, but it is an important part of who I am. It's a part of how I run my business. So talking about it. Other ways, like using the money I make in my business to give generously to causes that are really important to me. And we don't tithe directly out of my business. I know you do that some, Jena.
Yeah. We are doing more intentional this year.
Yeah. And so I think that's cool. And I need to figure out that whole side of it. We tithe like significantly though once I pay myself to different ministries. We actually just added a few more this year that Adam and I are starting to give to. But that's something that's important to me of like using the money I make, not just for me, but for other people. And then praying for customers. I know we talked about that on your episode, but like praying for customers and clients. I think that is really such a special thing we can do as believers of like, it doesn't have to be like, hey, we're on Zoom call with my client. Let me pray over you right now, which it could mean that.
Bible. Let me send it with a welcome package.
Which I mean, maybe it is that in some, like if you're a life coach who's a believer, like that's a great way to like praying over your clients on a coaching call. I think that'd be awesome. But that hasn't been what it looks like for me, but it is something like I pray for my customers to have success in their business. They'll be able to have a good time easy time with their template, all kinds of different things. And then another one I think of how like faith and business go together for me would be I try to honor God in the way I'm operating my business, which means like being honest in marketing, being kind to people.
Which is a tough one because, and I'm going to ask you this question about like, you've taken a lot of different courses. There's a lot of courses out there, and we've had these kind of conversations offline, coaching programs that don't come at things from a biblical perspective. Like they don't have that worldview. And so it's very easy to slip into a type of marketing that can very much lead on the side of a little bit deceitful. And I have been guilty of that myself, of listening to these gurus and then not being, no, this is not right.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that from a point of, position of doing this well all the time. So I totally get what you're talking about there. It's a fine line.
Well, I'm with you. I'm hoping to do an episode in the future about this, but just like, and there's so many things that I just think about now where I'm like, oh yeah, I never thought about that like some stuff like fake scarcity. It's like, is that really like, do we really have to do that in our marketing? And like, one thing I hate is when people blow out of proportions what bonuses are worth. When it's like, you can get this product for $97 and I'm throwing in $4,000 of bonuses. It's like, are you really? So like kind of reconsidering. The market's getting a little
smarter though. So I feel like people are like, that's BS.
Yes. And so like I try to, and I'm certainly not unguilty of having done some of those kind of things in the past, but I definitely am like very attentive to that. And I feel like last year especially, I became more attentive to like one of my pet peeves, and Jena, I think I've told you this, but is like when you are applying for a mastermind and they have a question on there, which is like, are you 100% in or not? Like, is it a heck yes or a no? Only talk to us if it is a yes, but they don't tell you the price. And so it's like, I don't know if it's a heck yes until I know the price.
Yeah, it's not transparent enough.
Yeah, so I have a lot of feels about that.
Yeah, well, I think this is all helpful information too, because you've listed so many ways that if you are a person of faith, a Christian faith specifically we're talking about here, like these are ways that you can incorporate your faith into your business. And it doesn't have to be like we were talking about. You don't have to be like, here's a Bible. Yeah. Like if you want to do that, that's part of your business model. I don't know. But if you're talking to people, like most of my business is very similar. I talk very much so about my faith as a part of my brand because it's who I am, but I don't teach on faith in my career coaching programs. But if somebody has a question about that, they can come to me and ask me about it. And I've had that happen before. And so I think it's awesome that you're intentionally thinking about that as a believer, incorporating that into your business. So I love it. I love it. Let's talk. We're mentioning it before about you've taken a lot of different programs. So anytime I'm interested in a new coaching program or following somebody on Instagram, or I always ask Elizabeth, like, what do you think about this program and this course? So you are a course junkie. You are a self-improvement junkie. So tell me what your favorite courses or programs that you've taken and invested in, because there's a lot out there, honestly, and we've talked about this, that are not worth it. Yeah. They have really great marketing, but once you get it in, it's kind of bad quality. So talk us through what your favorite investments have been.
Yeah, it's so funny because you and I really do talk about this all the time of like all the, and I feel like you take more than I do though. Do you really think I take more programs than you?
Well, maybe we take equal amount.
Yeah, I've gotten more into investing and stuff. Yeah, than I used to.
Taken more.
Yeah, so I would say, for personal stuff, I'm in Natalie Bacon's Grow You program, which is a life coaching membership, and I love it.
What do you love about it?
So every month there's a topic and she does a video and coaches you on it, like coaches the group. It's actually interesting because like some of these, like especially in the business world, we have a lot of like Facebook groups with programs and things like that. It's not like that at all. It's very like anonymous, but you get to, Natalie teaches on a topic. There's coaching calls every week on all different kinds of things. And yeah, I like the coaching. And there's also like written coaching where you can write in a question and then they coach you on that. And I just think Natalie Bacon's awesome. I really love her. She has a podcast. That was a good investment. Yes, it's a monthly thing. It's really affordable. So I love that. And then for business, I mean, I know you know this, Jena. I really love Business by Design. And I still haven't finished it. And James honestly probably does have some of the more older fashion marketing, maybe a little bit that we were talking about, but I think he is a really great business owner and there's so much value in that course. And again, I still haven't finished it because it's like giant. So it's like you can kind of do some and then implement. And I was on his podcast, which was really fun, where we talked about like some of the wins I had from that program. But that's one where I'm like, seriously, I think it was like $3,000, like best $3,000 I think I've spent in my business. So
I love that. I love that honesty, because there are a lot out there that are not good. So that's, I think that's helpful for people to hear. Like, one, you're investing in yourself. And then two, like, here's some places that I would recommend going because it worked for me. So I love it. What's the favorite part about your business?
Okay, favorite part. One would be teaching on my podcast, since that's the main place I do that right now, which again, I want to get into, Jenna and I have talked about this so many times. I want to get into more like business coaching and creating some courses. I have a lot of stuff coming in those realms. But I love teaching so much. And the other thing would be getting like deep into a template design. Like when I'm just like, just working on it. Yes. Like, and I love the early stages of making templates. I both love and hate, because it's like there's so much like decision making of getting the color palette right, the fonts right. But then I love it once I've kind of gotten those things figured out, and then I'm just like working through all the different pages and sections. It's really fun.
I love your templates. Your templates are my favorite. I have used them multiple times. I bought 3. Is that right? 3 at this point?
Well, and you have, it's fun because I think you're the only person I know who did this, but Jenna's wedding website was with one of my templates, like the literal site for like, here's our wedding date and that sort of stuff. I hate wedding
websites. They're so ugly. I'm sorry, but they're just terrible. And they're not really, I could not go to market with our wedding.
Yeah, I remember you were texting me about it, and you were like, you were using, I guess, like Wedding Wire and some of those kind of sites, and you were like, what do I do? And I'm like, let me just send you this template, and you can just use that.
It was great. It was such a great gift. So I would recommend your templates to a million people, because they are really easy. Like, I've had you custom make my website, and I've done them myself, right? And they're very easy to maneuver. You make it really simple. So I can't say enough, because that's really difficult for entrepreneurs who are not I'm not design thinker. I can see what looks good and what doesn't look good, but I don't know how to create that myself. And you make that so easy with these templates. And, anyways, I just wanted to toot your horn there.
Thank you. I love that. And I love your websites.
That's where you're like in the zone, is when that's your like favorite part about your business. What's your least favorite part about your business? I don't think I put this question in there.
I know. Let me think. Okay. Honestly, that's so hard. If I'm being honest, the inbox would be my least favorite. Actually, I have a few least favorites. That's probably the actual least, which I have a team helping me with that now, and have like really all of last year. But I just hired someone recently. Her name's Stacy, who's doing customer support specifically, but we're still in training mode. So I've actually been in the inbox even more than I used to be, which again, I just don't love it. And it overwhelms me. I'm really bad at letting emails sit forever and not responding to them. If I'm like, I don't know what to say to this, I'm just like, I'll just leave it. Like, I'm really bad.
I'm really bad at that too.
Yeah. It's like, when I hired Stacy, I was like, okay, we're going to clean out my inbox. And then I pretty quickly realized like a lot of the emails that were sitting were just because I didn't know what to say. It wasn't that I like needed her to like do something special on them. I just like hadn't responded. The other thing I probably like the least is like the legal and technical side. Maybe technical is not the right word. Legal, the tax side. I can share something embarrassing here. My LLC became delinquent last year because I literally didn't pay the annual fee, and I just completely forgot. And I fixed it really quickly. Yeah. But it was like, I just didn't realize. Like, I didn't realize I skipped that. So don't follow me there. You have to pay that every year. But I just like, they don't email you or tell you. So I was like, I didn't realize. But, and I was like filing for getting a new bank account for my business. And they were like, your LLC is delinquent. We can't approve you. And I was like, wait, I didn't know that. I thought it was fine. So some of that, I'm like, I'd rather just not deal with this and work on other stuff.
It's the worst part about having a business is taxes and legal stuff. Yes. And I think that's also what holds people back from starting their businesses, because they're like, I don't even know. And that's where you absolutely should outsource to a professional, because it is the best money you could spend on your business is to outsource your taxes and any legal things that you're having to deal with.
Yeah. And too, with like, I've said this before on my podcast, but like on this podcast, I feel like I'm being on your show right now. But yeah, that like, you just starting and not worrying about the legal stuff immediately is something I typically would tell people to do, because it's a lot of it doesn't matter until you're making money anyway. So if you get too hung up in like, what exact account am I going to use? It's like, okay, well, just like work on making money and building up that side. I have an episode that's like the 5 8 things or 5 things you actually need to start your business, and the stuff that can wait, where I kind of talk about like which elements I'd recommend starting and waiting. Because I feel like I like the way I did it, which wasn't like I waited a little while to get an LLC, and I was a sole proprietor for a while, which for what I do, it was totally fine. I didn't have a reason to worry about being sued by clients or anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so with you. So with kind of all the things that we're talking about, right? So we also want to talk about some fun personal things. So what are some of the things that you see in the next 5 years personally and professionally and with your business?
Okay, yeah. So personally, I definitely see us starting a family. And in 5 years, in 5 years, I could see like 2 kids maybe by the end of 5 years, or I don't know, maybe more than that. And Jena knows this, but I also feel like a big heart for adoption. So I don't know when that would happen, but I could see that being a part of our story. I also have always felt like called to foster care. And I say always, that's actually been a more recent calling that I've been praying about a lot, but that's something too I could see personally. I see us staying in Nashville because I just love this area, but possibly actually 5 years, probably definitely not living in the house we're in now, but living in a different house.
You've got that $1 million goal, girl.
Yeah, maybe somewhere else. I mean, I would love to live in Franklin. I love the Green Hills area a lot too. Those are 2 areas where I'm like, ooh, I really like those. And then this is like personal, but I don't even know that I remember if I've talked to you about this, but how Adam and I are getting real estate properties.
Yes.
How we have, okay. I couldn't remember if I told you that, but yeah, so we are closing on our first house at the end of January. And yeah, Adam literally, while we are recording this, is looking at 2 houses that we're probably going to put an offer on today. Because one of them already has a tenant, which is really cool. So it's so we might be doing that. But I would see us in like 5 years having more properties. We just got this business set up, which is fun. Like we did the whole like setting up another LLC and like bank accounts for this business and all of that. So I would see that growing and being something that I might be putting more attention towards in addition to my own business.
Yeah, I think that's real estate is something we've talked about a lot, my husband and I, of just like, it's so interesting. And I feel like oftentimes when we're in this online business world, we only see one way to like build a business, when really like based off your personal brand or providing a service or something, but there's so many other ways to diversify your income that I just love that you guys are doing that. That's so fun. Yeah. I love it. So you've had kind of a year. I mean, everybody has had a year, right? 2020. And I'm probably gonna cry. As your friend, how are you doing? You know, with your dad passing, and we were talking about your dad earlier, and he was such a fan of your show and a fan of you and your business and all the things. So I know everyone's wondering, how are you doing?
Oh, and even talking to you about that. I mean, I remember I sent it to you, but one of the times I stayed with him every time I went back home, but he listened to our interview, and I walked in on him listening to it. And it was so, I was just like, I'm going to record him talking about it. And he's like, definitely listen to this podcast, like holding up the phone, talking about that interview. And I'm going to try not to cry talking about this as well, but it really is so up and down. Like, okay, so like on New Year's Day, I got really emotional thinking about this is like my first year without him. And for those of you who don't know, because I should, I guess, preface that, my dad passed away last year of a heart attack over Father's Day weekend, like 2 days before Father's Day, 2 days before we were supposed to go to the river to like do the big Father's Day celebration we do every year. Because he lives 2 hours away from me, but we were super, super close. And it was so unexpected, not related to COVID. But it was like completely rocked my world. And I feel like, I still think about him every day, but I have had some more normal days where it's like, okay, I'm able to run my business, able to like do other things. But at first it certainly didn't feel that way. And something I wish I had done better of would have been taking a bigger break when all that happened. Like I never missed a week of the podcast, for example. It was like we just kept trekking on. And I'm so grateful too at that time to have had a team. That's something that was like, I don't like, for example, I literally quit on the inbox during that time. And Abby, she was really the only like main team member at that time, but she like completely took over, and that was awesome. And so helpful. But yeah, I mean, it really is super up and down, and we have had a hard year. I mean, I mentioned this on Instagram the other day, but like my house got broken into, which I know you know that whole story, but it's like that happened over Thanksgiving. And like I had to take Adam to the emergency room earlier in the year from like a bug bite allergic reaction and thought I was going to lose him like literally a month after losing my dad. So it was just very crazy. And one more thought I feel like I could add on that is for people who have a friend who has lost someone, and you've done a great job of this, Jena, but like, don't assume that the person doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And I think it's really good to ask that friend, like, hey, do you want to be asked, do you want me to keep checking in on you about this, or would you rather not talk about it? You know, like if you're not sure. Yeah, because like I think a lot of people assume that like, oh my gosh, if I mention her dad, she's going to start crying and like I don't know what to do about that, you know, and it's like, oh, she probably doesn't want to. But in reality, I think it just really would vary person to person. For me, I like to be asked about it. So it's like, I think that's a great thing if you have a friend who's lost someone, being like, hey, do you want to be checked in on about this, or would you rather just bring it up when you feel like you want to talk about it? Kind of like asking that question, I think is really helpful. Because people ask you like 24/7 right after it happens, and you're like sick of talking about it.
Right.
And then later it's like people forget it happened and don't mention it anymore. So.
Yeah. And meanwhile, it's still a gaping, it is a hole for you.
Yeah.
And so like that silence almost makes that hole feel larger if you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Well, I know he's so proud of you and all that you've done. So, oh, sorry, friends. I wasn't we supposed to about this crying. Why am I crying?
You're the best. I mean, you're such a sweet friend.
I think
appreciate
that
you.
Your dad was such a proponent of you in your business and like all that you've done. And I just think about you talking about him speaking life over you. I just think that's such an amazing thing for a parent to do. And so, anyways, I'm just proud of you, and I know he is too. So,
thank you.
Anywho, I just wanted to make sure we asked you that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about what you are looking forward to in the next 100 episodes. So we've gotten to 100. We've talked about some fun personal stuff. We talked about your big audacious goals with your business. What are you looking forward to with the next 100 podcast episodes?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to doing more interviews. Because guys, I mean, even when you heard me say that Jena was the first interview, and that was the 42nd episode. So it's like I took a while to start actually interviewing people, because honestly, interviews scare me still. Like interviewing people. I know I'm like the opposite of what some people are. I like solo episodes, but interviews can feel more intimidating. And that was more early on. Like I just had like a batch week of a few interviews that people will hear, you know, in the next coming months. And I felt better in those situations. But at first it was like, oh, it just like freaked me out for some reason. So doing more interviews now that I do feel more like interview confident, that's something I feel excited about. And yeah, just all like, I mean, one thing I so appreciate is everyone listening, but I get so much feedback of like, it feels like a friend chatting over coffee and those kind of reviews. And so I want to like keep bringing that kind of energy to the show of just like fun, but really educational business content. So
I love it. I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
When somebody experiences your brand, whether it's your podcast or it's your website or it's you personally, what do you want them to feel? Because I think you kind of summed it up a little bit in the last question, but what do you want them to feel when they come to your page?
Yeah, and that's something like guys listening, if you don't ever think about that, you should, because that's like creating your entire like, I mean, the brand vibe, persona, all of those things. For me, I would say fun is something I want people to feel, of like fun, energy, personable, relatable. And then it's like that it's educational and professional, but yet fun. So not overly polished, not overly stiff. I've always wanted my website to feel different than other designers' websites. Mm-hmm. And I also really like, something I love is like bold, direct copywriting, which you are so good at that. Your copywriting. That was so fun when we designed your website. Like you wrote such incredible copy. But I love like just bold, direct copy that's kind of fun, a little sassy at times. Yeah. So kind of bringing some of that. But I actually asked that question on the end of the year survey of like, what do you, I forget how the way it was phrased, but like what 3 words would you use to describe my brand basically was the question. And I love reading those because it is like, you can kind of get clarity of like, okay, people are saying, you know, these words, fun, educational, relatable, down to earth, things like that. So that's what I would say. I like to have the fun.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm so proud of you. This podcast is amazing. I listen to episodes. You educate me. You are a good friend. You're a great business owner. And I cannot wait to see the next 100 episodes that you have. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Thank you for interviewing me. And let's tell everyone where they can find you while you're on here. I always ask people that at the end. So tell people where to go follow you and everything.
Yes. So my main places are LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm back on Instagram.
Yep.
So I own a company called Recruit the Employer, and we do career coaching for mid to senior level female professionals. And so I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm always producing content there. So you connect with me there, or you can follow me at Jena_Viviano.
Yes, and for you guys who are on LinkedIn, Jena crushes LinkedIn. I don't use LinkedIn, so I don't get to see you crushing it, but then I get to hear about it. And so you're like absolutely rocking it there. So anyway, thank you so much, Jena. This was really fun.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, there you have it, the 100th episode. Thank you so much for listening to the end. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation between Jena and I. Isn't Jena amazing? She's seriously one of my favorite people. So I loved getting to have her back on the podcast for this special interview. And I just want to thank you guys again for being here, for being a podcast listener, for being a supporter of my business. And I hope I can be a supporter of yours as well through this podcast and continuing on. So cheers to 100 more episodes. And I can't wait to hear your feedback on this one. Feel free to DM me or tag me on Instagram at Elizabeth McCravey, or you can always send us an email as well. So again, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Bye, you guys.